I'd like to say good morning to you, and good to see everybody here today, and happy Father's Day to the fathers here. You have got your work cut out for you, even if you already got them out of the house, it seems like sometimes. But fathers, what we really need in this country is men that will just take the lead like God said they were supposed to, and not be scared. And it's an epidemic, but we will keep preaching and teaching the scriptures and then let God take care of the rest. He said for us to preach the gospel, but he didn't say anything about taking notes and keeping up and making people do stuff, because you can't make them do it. But you can just do what you can. All right, so last week we started talking about the second coming of Christ, and we established the fact that Jesus said that he was going to come again, and we also looked at several verses in the New Testament that support this fact, and we also established partially that he has not returned the second time. And of course, we mentioned the AD 70 doctrine, which they teach that Jesus came back the second time in AD 70, and that is false. So the next part we want to look at is Matthew chapter 24. And this will also give us some more evidence to the fact that Jesus did not return the second time in AD 70. And last week we someone mentioned Matthew 24, and I wanted to wait until today to study it, because it probably going to take the whole class period. And I remember where I was when I was studying Matthew 24, and it made sense to me. I was right over there in that fellowship hall, and we were studying Matthew 24, and it finally made sense. But I'm not going to say that you can't just read it and understand it, but this is one of the chapters and one of the passages that I had to have some help with, because it's not spelled out like the Ten Commandments, one right after the other, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I had to have some guidance to understand it, because what I thought it meant, it didn't. Well, I'll explain it to you just the way that I understand it, put it like that. So in a lot of people have written books and have, I guess, made a lot of money on predicting when Jesus was going to return and the end of the world. I don't even know the names of the men or women that have written the books. I know they're out there, and they've been writing them for years, but I can tell you this, that every one of them have been wrong, because the time that they said that Jesus was going to come back and the end of the world was going to happen has already passed. If you probably heard that stuff. But now I remember, you hear all kind of things. Well, the world's going to come to an end on September so-and-so, 2000 and so-and-so. And it didn't. But I've never seen them issue an update admitting that they were wrong. They were just selling books, seems like. So nobody knows when Jesus is going to return the second time. And let's just go ahead and look at Matthew chapter 24, verses 1 to 3, 1 and 2. 1 through 3. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? All right, so Jesus was sitting with his disciples, and he was pointing at the temple and all the buildings in Jerusalem. And he said, There shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And if I don't refer to history too much, because history can be wrong, because normally history is written by the winners of whatever conflict there was. But in AD 70, when the Romans annihilated the city of Jerusalem, there was not one stone left upon another. And they killed so many people that it said, they killed so many Jews that it said that the blood was running in the ditches of the streets. So if you think that our world is as violent as it has ever been, that's not true. It's always been violent. And but we don't have to participate in the violence. Now, because we have somebody that can win the battle for us if we just trust in him and ask him to help us. Now, we have to separate. There's actually two questions that Jesus addresses. So in verse 2, he's telling them that physically there's not going to be one stone left upon another, and it all shall be thrown down. So then it says his disciples came to him privately. Now watch. Now this is, if you don't get verse 3, you don't get the rest of the chapter. And he sat upon the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? Now pause right there. What things? What things? What things? See, we just read right through it. When shall these things be? Okay, verse 2. They're asking about the things that he was talking about in verse 2. There shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Okay, that's the first question. That's the first question. And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? That's the second question. Okay? That's the second question. They asked him two questions. It was two subjects. When shall these things be? When shall these stones be torn down? And one shall not be left upon another. And what will be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give you the answer to the questions, and then we're going to go back and prove it. Now, Jesus gave the answer to the first question. When shall these things be? Starting in verse 4 and ending in verse 35. Okay? It's the same thing. Yes, sir, Tommy? Yes, sir. The first half, up to verse 35. It's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. Okay? You're right. That's good, Tommy. Now, to answer the second question, the sign of thy coming and the end of the age or the end of the world, starts in verse 36 and ends in basically verse 51. All right? Now, we're going to prove it. Okay? Now, there's a prevalent teaching that we call it premillennialism. It's basically the idea of that Jesus is going to come back, and instead of doing what he said he was going to do in like 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 13 and 17, or 2 Peter chapter 3, or 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, 7 to 9, they teach that that Jesus is going to come back and set up a kingdom on the earth for 1,000 years, and he's going to reign for 1,000 years. Okay. Now, as I told you last week, that if one thing that I have learned is that I can be wrong. All right? I don't mind admitting that I am wrong, but you're going to have to show me and prove it by the Scriptures. Okay? Now, the premillennialism teaching or doctrine is so complex, but yet it's so simple because none of it's true. But it's really complex. And, you know, when, I don't know how many of y'all ever heard Jerry Clower. He said one of his pet peeves is when people make things more complicated than they really are. And he was talking about, he was in the Atlanta airport and he wanted a cup of coffee, and where he usually got his coffee wasn't there anymore because they reorganized the airport, and he started going to places, you know, that he couldn't even pronounce, thinking it was a coffee shop, but it was actually where they do women's hair and stuff. But, you know, and I'm like that too, but and the thing is, Satan knows what he's doing. And this is not very complicated. But like a false doctrine or a false teaching like premillennialism is so complicated that 99% of the people that adhere to it, they couldn't explain it to you. They just go along with it because that's what the preacher said. And that's what their mom and daddy told them. It's very complicated. The premillennialism doctrine is extremely complicated. But it's not very difficult to disprove, because the simple, easy to understand scriptures disprove all of it. And I want to give you one example first. In the premillennialism doctrine or teaching, how many of you have been standing in the line at Walmart, and on the tabloid there, like the Inquirer or the whatever those things are, the National Enquirer, whatever, and it says that the Antichrist has been discovered? Now, before I started studying this, I thought that there was just one Antichrist that was supposed to come sometime whenever Jesus was about to come back, or right when he came back. I'm not sure, because it's all different. And this Antichrist was supposed to be so-and-so. You know, it was supposed to be Napoleon one time, and then it was Hitler, and then it was Stalin, and then it was Barack Obama, then it was Donald Trump. And so, but the thing is, it's never been right. What they say was going to happen didn't happen. So let's go to 1 John, and I want to just give you the easiest part to understand that let's go to 2 John first. And there's about 5 scriptures in 1st, 2nd, 3rd John that will just tear the legs out from under this thing. 2 John verse 6. And this is love, that we walk after his commandments. This is the commandment, that as you have heard from the beginning, you should walk in it. For many deceivers are entered into the world, who confess not this Jesus Christ is come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and an Antichrist. Now wait a minute. I thought that the Antichrist was yet to come. No. They were, some of them, already in the world 2,000 years ago. And that's just one place. Okay, so let's go back to Matthew 24. Now, also in that National Enquirer, now, people just believe anything. And it doesn't take much to just study it for yourself. But every time a war starts up somewhere, every time a war starts up somewhere, and they got an earthquake too, guess what they're going to say? You know what they're going to say. Wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes. It's about time for Jesus to come back. And depending on the situation, and depending on how much time I have at my disposal, that that dictates whether I'm going to say anything or not. Because if I got 5 minutes and they start saying stuff like that, most of the time I don't even respond. Because it's going to be more than a 5-minute conversation. And if there's something else I've learned, that you need to pick the time and the place for certain conversations. Because if you just give them part of the picture and you ain't got but 2 minutes, then it could be that you're going to make them mad, and I'm not against making people mad, but I don't want to do it on purpose, okay? And you might not see them again for 6 months. And what you said, you don't know where they're going to take it. So I don't try to explain this, because it'll take an hour if they know how to understand the Bible. If they don't know how to understand the Bible, it will take months, because sadly you have to tear down sometimes to rebuild. Now let's look at verses 4 to 35. And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. That's some antichrist right there that he was talking about coming. He didn't say antichrist, but they were deceiving people. And here we go. Here it is, right here. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Not yet. He's not talking about the end of time and the end of the world and the end of the age. He's still talking about the end of Jerusalem. So he said, you're going to hear wars and all this, but don't be troubled, because it's not here yet. Now think about it. He is telling them that it was going to be pretty soon. And in verse 34 and 35, he's going to tell them that it's going to be in the lifetime of the people that he's talking to. He said, this generation shall not pass till all these things are fulfilled. All right? And you got to set up barriers on this thing, because you want to apply what it says in verses 4 to 35 to the second question. But he's not talking about the second question yet. And for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All right? Every time that there is a war or a famine or some pestilence or an earthquake, somebody's going to start running in the streets like Henny Penny and saying the sky is falling. Every time. Because they're not applying, that they haven't had a division in Matthew 24, because they've never been taught. And I didn't know. I'll be quite honest. I didn't know how to divide it. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. You got to divide it. Or the American Standard says, handling aright. You can't mishandle the first 35 verses of Matthew 24, or you're going to make a mess. And I have made messes. I have made lots of messes. Okay? All these are the beginning of sorrows. Now listen to what he's saying. He's saying that Jesus is saying, I am giving you a warning for what to look for about the destruction of Jerusalem. I'm telling you what's going to happen before the Romans come in here and tear everything down. And they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and they shall kill you. Isn't that what happened? They killed a bunch of Jews. And ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And I'm sure they killed some Christians too. But all the Jews hadn't converted. Some of them did and some of them didn't. And then shall many be offended and shall betray one another and shall hate one another. When catastrophes happen, then people go crazy, don't they? When they just lose their minds. Oh, Charles Bach said something one time I never forgot. He said, a man is like an orange. He said, you can see what it looks like on the outside, but if you want to see what it looks like on the inside, poke a hole in the top and squeeze it. That's what I used to do when I was a kid. I'd poke a hole with a knife. I cut a hole on top of the orange and I'd squeeze the juice out of it. Well, a man, same way. Women too. But mostly men. If you want to see what he's like on the inside, put him in a vice. Put some pressure on him. You'll see. Won't you? Uh-huh. Yeah. I know I'm rambling, but there's a old meme, an old drawing about a farmer and a banker. And the farmer is he's got a vice. You know what a vice is? Like on a work table. And he's got the farmer squeezed. I mean, he's got him. He got him in the vice. And the farmer's got his work clothes on, and the banker's got his suit on, and the banker's got his hands on that handle. And the farmer turned around to the banker, and he said, crank down on it one more time, big man, because I respond well under pressure. You see what I'm saying? You'll see. You'll see. All right? And verse 11 says, and many false prophets shall rise, and many deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. All right? Now, right here he's talking more to Christians. Because there were some Jewish people that had become Christians that were going to be in Jerusalem in AD 70. And remember, this is 36 years before the destruction of Jerusalem. That's a long time. And verse 14 says, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. All right. Now let's pause right there. Let's pause right there. That is extremely important because Jesus said, and this gospel of the kingdom, he's talking about the gospel of Christ. The kingdom, not the physical kingdom that they say is going to be set up. It's the spiritual kingdom. Shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. All right, now that is easy to understand, everyday language. Now there's some verses in Matthew 24 that are apocalyptic in nature, like the book of Revelation is written in signs and symbols. Okay, but this is not apocalyptic language. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then the end shall come. So the gospel had to be preached all over the world before the end of Jerusalem, destruction of Jerusalem. And Brother Harp is about 2 steps ahead of me. I can see it in his eyes, and I think it's in Colossians 1, isn't it? There you go. There you go. The man is good. I can see it. Philippians. Now look here at Colossians. Flip over to Colossians. Chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. Now, if I had I'm not trying to hint anything, okay, but if I had a chalkboard, I could write it up there and draw lines and boxes, but just pretend I got a chalkboard right now. I'm not trying to say anything, Dale. I'm just saying. The book of Colossians was written, to my knowledge, in AD 62. Is that close? Okay. Now in AD 33, in Matthew 24, Jesus said that the gospel of the kingdom must be preached in all the world, then the end shall come. Okay? Remember when Jesus said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature, he that believes is baptized shall be saved. That was God's plan. He said he's going to give everybody an opportunity, and then he's going to destroy Jerusalem. And symbolically put an end. Well, actually, Judaism stopped on the day of Pentecost, but AD 70 was the physical end of Jews and Jerusalem. And also, there's not a Jew alive today. Think about this. There's not a physical Jew alive today that can trace his lineage back to any one of the 12 tribes. You know why? Because all those records were destroyed in AD 70. Back before that happened, it was like the courthouse. And they kept detailed family records of what tribe you were from, and they could trace it all the way back to Abraham. But they can't now. All that was destroyed. Okay? Now, look at what the book of Colossians says in chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. For the hope which is laid up for you in heaven, whereof ye heard before in the word of the truth of the gospel. Now check this out. You cannot miss this, or you will not understand Matthew 24 at all, ever. Which is come unto you as it is in all the world, and bringeth forth fruit as it doth also in you, since the day you heard of it and knew the grace of God and truth. All right? Now, so in basically 29 years, the apostles and disciples carried the gospel into all the earth without airplanes, without the internet, without automobiles. Think about that. They did it. They were working. But the point is, this was said in AD 62, that it had been accomplished. It had been accomplished. Okay? Sir? All right, chapter 1, verse 23, is that right? Okay. Yep. It's good to have some help. Verse 23 in Colossians 1, it says, if you continue in the faith, grounded and settled, and be not moved away from the hope of the gospel which ye have heard, and which was preached to every creature which is under heaven, whereof I, Paul, am made a minister. That's double proof. The gospel was preached to every creature under heaven and to all the world in 29 years. And Jesus said that had to happen before the things that he was talking about were allowed to happen. That's the destruction of Jerusalem. Let's go back to Matthew 24. All right. Let's go back to verse 14. We'll smooth that out, then we'll go to the next verse. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all the nations, and then the end shall come. He's not talking about the end of time, end of the world, end of the age. He's talking about those stones. Anybody have a question so far? Is that clear? Have I made a mistake, do you think? Anything at all? Questions or comments? Okay. Now, verse 15, he said, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whosoever readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. All right? The abomination of desolation. Now, if you ever read stuff by the premillennialists, they take this term, the abomination of desolation, and apply it to the Antichrist, I guess. The one Antichrist, which the Bible says there were going to be many, and they started appearing right after Jesus went back into heaven. All right. Now, from what I understand, I may be wrong, that whenever you see the Roman army and those soldiers standing in the temple, your temple is close. Absolutely. Yes. I would say so. Yeah, that's what, and he's going to elaborate on that. Now I don't. There's probably some proof in the Bible somewhere that they did leave, but yes. But the Christians in Judea is what Tommy was referring to. Did they leave? And I don't know the answer to that, but I'm assuming that they did. Some of them did. I would have. I mean, that's right. a good point. I told you I don't know everything. I don't even know half of it. That's a good point. Patmos, yes. So basically, it's like you remember what was that judge that fell over backwards when he heard the Ark of the Covenant was taken? Eli. Man, he had been informed that his 2 sons were killed in the battle, and that, he didn't fall over backwards. But when he heard that the Ark of the Covenant had been taken by heathen hands, you remember what happened if you touched the Ark? Well, the heathens got it, and God had the power to not let the heathens get the Ark of the Covenant, did he not? So when he heard that the heathen had got the Ark of the Covenant, he fell over backwards and died. It's kind of the same thing. He said, when you see the abomination of desolation, when you see these Romans coming in and setting up camp in your home and in your temple, you'll know that God has left the temple. And it's time to head for the hills. So we'll stop there for today. I want to keep you, it's like one of these TV shows. I want to keep, what do you call them, cliffhangers. I want to keep you on the edge because there's more exciting things to come next week, Lord willing. Thank you for your attention. We're looking forward to Dale's sermon this morning. Thank you very much.